Today we'll be going over Victimology Chapter 12, which looks at victims of special populations being mental illness, people with disabilities, as well as people who are incarcerated. So to start off, people with developmental disabilities, this is any kind of lifelong impairment of any like function that you go through and like major function in life. This could be anything like any kind of speaking habits, your ability to learn, how you move, how you talk, and any kind of thing that hinders your day-to-day life. So the most common developmental disabilities are cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and autism spectrum disorder. So according to the National Crime Victimization Survey in 2013, there were almost 1.3 million violent crimes against people with disabilities, and the most common of these is simple assaults. We also see that people with disabilities are almost 2.5 times more likely to be victimized than people who don't have disabilities. And with this, we see that men and women typically have similar victimization rates, as well as blacks, white, Hispanics are also equally likely to be victimized. The age range of 12 to 19 has the highest victimization rates out of any age category. It is also highlighted in this chapter that about 15% of victims of these crimes believe that their disability is the reason why they were targeted. And it's also noted that victims are more likely to be harmed by someone they know. And I believe this is probably the case just because like the people they know they have this disability, and so it makes them feel like they could take advantage of them easier. Some risk factors that lead to this victimization is one, the vulnerability, the lack of understanding kind of day-to-day things, as well as why somebody might be victimizing them. They might think it's not even victimization. Living in poverty, as well as being dependent on others. So all of these can kind of play a factor in it. This chapter then gets into the victimization of people with mental illnesses, and mental illnesses kind of include depression, anxiety, any sort of drug addiction, alcohol addiction, as well as schizophrenia. Those are just some of the major ones. And we see that victims are 2.5 times more likely to be violently victimized if they are struggling from a mental illness rather than if they didn't have any sort of mental illness at all. And we also see that males have a higher rate than females when it comes to being victimized. This chapter then gets into victimization of individuals who are incarcerated. Now, people who are incarcerated, which they kind of struggle from a lot of different victimizations, and they're kind of most at risk for assault, homicide, theft, and sexual victimization, and we'll kind of touch on that. So assault, they're around a lot of people who are in there from assault, and there's a lot of arguments, and there's gang violence in prison, so assault happens. Homicide happens as well in prison. Theft, people stealing from your cells and whatnot, as well as sexual victimization. Those are kind of the four highlighted ones. So we saw in 2017 that 3 inmates in local jails and 57 inmates in kind of different state facilities were actually homicide victims. Now with the rates of this, it's literally almost 100% male rates. It's 99% males to 1% females when it comes to victimization rates of homicide. 46% of these are whites. In general, males are more likely to be victimized, as well as males are more likely to be victimized physically by a staff member that's working in the correctional facility than females are. On the other hand, females are much more likely to be victimized physically by another inmate than males, so those, obviously kind of go together. To wrap up, we see that females are over 3 times more likely to be sexually victimized while in prison compared to males. Females right under 7% at 6.9%, and males a little under 2% at 1.7%. Again, males are more likely to be victimized by the staff. So something I want to highlight right before the end of the chapter, I feel like people kind of have this idea that a lot of sexual victimization goes on in these prisons, but which is 2% or less for males. That is much lower than the media makes it seem like. So that wraps up our chapter.